Welcome back. The weather is warming up and it is time to plant one of our very favorite crops. One of the best staple survival crops, one of the tastiest crops, one of the most aggressive crops that you can pretty much just ignore and let it become a ground cover once it gets established. What crop is this? Well, I probably put the name of it in the title, so fountain. The weather has warmed up and it is time to plant sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are part of the ground cover layer of our grocery row gardens, along with cucumbers and watermelons. But the sweet potatoes we plant right around the same time as we plant both of those, and over time they start to take over and they become the dominant ground cover at the end of the gardening season. Now, it doesn't matter if you have a grocery row garden or not. The growing of sweet potatoes is quite simple, and I'm going to show you how we start them and how we put them in and what you can expect after you've done so. If you've grown sweet potatoes before and you don't pull every single sweet potato, and you don't have a climate in which the ground freezes solid, so let's say zone 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, if you've grown sweet potatoes, often you'll see that they come back from a root beneath the ground. When the weather warms up, the sweet potatoes come back. If there's any of them that you forgot, and we always forget a few. So this one here is growing out of the ground. It looks like there's part of a sweet potato in here that got left. There we go. That sweet potato that we somehow failed to dig last year is making slips for us now. That's what we call these little pieces of vine that are growing off the top. So we use this ability of sweet potatoes to regrow, and we do it on purpose. We don't just rely on them coming back in the garden. A few months ago, we planted sweet potatoes in pots. The weather was cool, however, and they hardly did anything. As a matter of fact, I had sweet potatoes that we planted in the fall in pots, and I thought, maybe the greenhouse will be warm enough. It wasn't warm enough. Nothing happened. They don't like it until it warms up. Sweet potatoes are by nature a tropical crop. So when it starts to warm up, then they start growing, and we put sweet potatoes in our pots, and now they're making all of these vines. Now, if you want to start your sweet potatoes like this, just go get some sweet potatoes from somewhere. We had some left from last year. We had 3 varieties that we liked. We had an orange, a white, and a deep purple. It's purple all the way through with purple skin. So we just planted them in pots, some of the ones that we had left, or ones that were starting to sprout already, and then they make all these shoots coming out of these sweet potatoes right here. You see all this? Look at that density. This is ridiculous. So any one of these shoots is growing right out of the potato, and I could just pull it off like this if I want to do more damage. Possibly not have it regrow, but probably it will regrow. And then what I do is I take off most of the leaves, and that right there is ready to plant out in the garden. If I'm going to be a little less destructive about it, what I often do is I just go like this. I know that sounds crazy. See all of those stems left behind. There are buds on a lot of these, and they're going to regrow. As you can see, like right here, there's a bud right there that's going to regrow. And any one of these guys, as long as it's got a couple of nodes. The nodes are where the leaves grow out of the side. It's also where the roots grow out of the side. As you can see, it's been nice and moist in here, and it's warm, and they want to grow out of the side like this. So this is how you can start many hundreds more sweet potatoes. You just need a piece that's at least about 6 inches long usually, and then you're gonna trim the sides off. And you don't even necessarily need to do that, but I think it keeps it from losing moisture as quickly. Just take these pieces like that. Even that one, that's a shorty, but it's plenty. Each one of these is capable of growing a new plant. Sweet potatoes are very much like an ivy in that if you have a piece of it and you stick it in the ground, it's going to grow. This is why people are saying now, you know, don't plant English ivy. English ivy is so invasive, it just covers the ground and grows everywhere. And it does, and it's really hard to get rid of. Sweet potatoes get knocked out by the frost, but the ivy doesn't. But it's a similar growth pattern where any one of those nodes on the side is capable of rooting. But unlike with ivy, sweet potatoes actually grow you something worth eating, and they won't destroy the mortar on the side of your house. All it takes to plant these in the ground is a machete. You could use a trowel if you wanted to, but use a machete for everything. Just gonna dig, stick it a couple of inches in the ground, cover it over. That right there is how you do it. So let's do that again. Give it about 2 feet. Dig a little trench in the ground. Stick a sweet potato in it. There we go. If you don't have time to put your slips in the ground right away, and to show you what happens, about actually less than a week ago, we cut these just like I did the other ones, and I stuck them in this water, and I intended to take them to an event with me. Well, I didn't get around to taking them to the event with me. I was going to sell sweet potato slips, and so these purple sweet potatoes have grown all of these roots. And note, these are those nodes. See how they're only growing from the nodes. Where we cut those leaves off, it doesn't matter if you cut the leaves off or not, it's just where the growth is going to come from the roots. So you can just take your slips and stick them in water if you want to, and they're going to grow roots. But I like this to happen directly in the ground.
Let me hear the Pinterest ladies go. Postable repository of compostables. When you're done recycling, you know it's toast postable. David the Good, oh, he's so blog postable. And his herb chicken is mad slow roastable. So let me hear the Pinterest ladies go. Let me hear the Pinterest ladies go. Stack biomass in the bottom to turn to soil. Save me buying bags, going through the toil of mixing up a proper batch of fine sifted stuff. I jam the sucker up with lots of carbon.
You'll notice I don't even just dig a hole straight down. I kind of make a little shallow sideways hole and lay the stem down in there and put it in. I don't have to dig down 6 inches or a foot or whatever to plant them. It's gonna be fine. Just a little trench, drop it in there. And then what's gonna happen is this may wilt and look really sad for a few days, but don't worry, it's going to root. Just water them in after you plant them, or plant when it's going to rain, or plant right after a rain so the soil's already a little bit moist, and they will root like crazy from the nodes that are beneath the ground, and then they're just going to start running. And so long as the weather is warm, your sweet potatoes will be happy. Another way to keep them happy that you're not going to be told by other gardening books or YouTubers or anything is you have to sing to them. Sweet potato, you can grow, your vines will flourish, and you'll know that you are loved in my garden. And you can make great big tubers. By the time we dig your tubers, they will be great big tubers on the vine. Sweet potatoes like loose soil and some organic matter. I've grown them in both sand and in clay. If you have clay, just make sure you have broken the soil up a little bit or put in a lot of good mulch and organic matter on top. You could do the lasagna garden thing and plant them into that. With sand, I also find that mulch helps. Some of the best sweet potatoes I ever grew were in deep mulch, kind of a Back to Eden style, where we had a food forest system that had been mulched with about a foot of wood chips a year before, and that material had started to break down and become this rich, loamy, black material that didn't look much like the original sand. And we stuck sweet potato slips all through there, and we got baskets and baskets. But whatever soil you have, they're pretty forgiving so long as they get some water at the beginning, and if you have a good bit of compost, compost fixes everything. The time until harvest for sweet potatoes is going to vary by what variety you have. We once planted a tropical variety and it ran and ran and ran and barely made tubers for us by the end of the season when the frost came. Whereas a lot of our orange varieties are more commercial types and they are just ready to be harvested in as early as 3 to 4 months. Generally though, they do that in commercial production because they want a certain size potato and they're very well fed and very well tended, and they harvest them out. They want them like this size so they can put them in the store and, you know, a single serving sweet potato size. I like to let our vines run all the way until just before the first frost. When I know that it's going to freeze, we come out and we tear the vines up and we harvest our sweet potatoes, because we want potatoes that are as big as possible. So the longer time they get to run, the bigger the potatoes get to a certain extent. But if we can get gigantic potatoes for the same space, and generally because it's so hot through the summer, we're not going to be using that space for anything else. So why not just let the sweet potatoes run all the way until the fall? Then we get those great big potatoes. Now, when you first harvest your potatoes out of the garden, you're going to be disappointed in the flavor. They're starchy, they're not very sweet. They need to go through a curing period. So curing sweet potatoes is just taking the sweet potatoes out of the ground, putting them someplace in the shade, put them on your porch, you know, put them on a patio or something like that, and just spread them out, let them dry out a little bit, and then you can just let them sit for a couple of weeks, and then the starches mature into sugars under storage. With some plants you'll hear, you know, wait until the first freeze. No, don't do that with sweet potatoes. You don't want them freezing. They're a tropical. Just harvest them out of the ground when you harvest them and let them sit for a couple of weeks, and then the flavor comes in. Early on when I was growing sweet potatoes and we tried our first sweet potatoes from the garden, I was very disappointed in the flavor because we hadn't allowed them to sweeten up. So let them cure somewhere, then you can put them in baskets or in boxes. We usually just put cardboard boxes in a shaded area in one of our porches and just let the potatoes sit there, and we eat them all the way through the winter, and then we have more that we can put in pots and start the entire thing over again the next spring. That's all it takes to grow sweet potatoes. It's very simple. You got one potato, you put it in a pot, and you let it grow. Now, I know some of you have seen your granny's method of sticking some toothpicks in a sweet potato and putting it in a jar. That works. Jar of water, sweet potato, toothpicks. I'm not going to say anything bad about your granny, except that I have had better luck just putting them in some potting soil and continually harvesting from them. And when I did the granny method when I was a kid, some of them rotted, and my mom told me I had to get that stinky stuff out of the kitchen right away. So if you don't want your mom to be upset at you, well, just stick them in a pot. It's gonna be fine. If you want to learn more about this grocery row gardening system, I have a little booklet on it, and I'll put a link to that below. And also, I have a new book out called Minimalist Gardening, which will give you practical tips and help and a philosophy of gardening that cuts through all the clutter and the junk and the commercialism and the buy this and do this and do this and do this and all these complicated systems that you really don't need. Takes your gardening back to basics, gives you practical help, and simplifies it. If you're a normal person who just wants to grow a good amount of food with less work than you would expect, check out Minimalist Gardening. I will put a link to that below. Thanks for joining me. Hope your sweet potatoes do great, and until next time, may your thumbs always be green. May your thumbs always be green. Green, green thumbs. May your thumbs always be green. Oh, those green, green thumbs. Oh, people say, what's wrong with your thumbs? You say, oh, they're just green because I like plants. And they're like, no, you should get that looked at, yeah. We've actually tested a few different types of music on the sweet potatoes over the years. The folksy thing is just kind of your standby. That's like your triple 13. And I often just do that, but I have tried some other things. We've tried grunge music. Apamea potatoes, apamea. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but you don't mind cause you can't speak English. Whoa, whoa. No, that actually worked better on turnips. So, you know, as we've continued our experimentation, you know, because experimentation is a big part of doing proper science in the garden. If you play it out of tune, I should be tuning somewhere else. I once played out of tune and a regular mulberry turned into a contorted mulberry. No lie, I was out there tuning for like 10 minutes because we had an intonation issue. Oh yeah, you can grow, you can grow, you can grow, you can grow, you can grow. All the other potatoes done left me behind. Growing so fast, growing so fast. You're the only potato that lasts. They don't like that very much. The rockabilly thing, nah. Yeah, interestingly though, sweet potatoes respond super well to know that you can grow, outgrow Babylon. Mommy, know that you can grow, outgrow Babylon. Freedom, freedom, freedom to run your vines. Freedom to run your vines. Outgrow Babylon, outgrow Babylon, outgrow the Babylon system. Now, of course, a love song is always appropriate. Sweet potato, won't you be mine? Make tubers on every vine, sprawling and wandering round the garden with me. Ooh. It actually works better on white potatoes than it does with sweet potatoes, because with white potatoes you can really look into their eyes.